through the course of playing Baldur's Gate 1, and Baldur's Gate 2, and then Baldur's Gate 3, and then Starfield, and then Cyberpunk, and exploring, and looting, and changing talent trees, and talking to everybody, I eventually started to just crave something a lot more fun, a lot more bright, and a lot more brainless. And so I could start to hear the Trials of Mana, Secret of Mana 2 music playing in my head. And I wanted to play both of them back to back. Each of them took, I don't know, about 17, 18 hours. And just to kind of contrast them, because Secret of Mana, the original, I've played a ton of times, and I love it. It's one of the games that me and two of my friends used to play before school. Like, we'd walk to school, Trevor and I would walk to school to my friend Adam's house, and Adam and Trevor were a year older than me, so they'd get to play because we didn't have a multi-tap. So I just watch them play Secret of Mana. Maybe we play some Street Fighter, and then Adam's parents would kick us out when we go to school. I don't know, it's the kind of game you can play in a day if you're playing with someone who knows the game well. To this day, it still has incredible strengths. Like, the unified aesthetic of bright graphics and bright music is like untouchable, I think, on that platform. Amazing sprite work on the bosses, and a really quick, breezy playthrough with really distinctive music. As I said, it's really fun to switch out weapons all the time, and it has those kind of cozy moments like the Sprite Forest, the final 8 Palace, the Misty Mountains where Sage Jock is, and it just flows really, really well. The weaknesses of it on this time playing through are basically just the mechanics of boss fights. There's so many times where bosses are immune, or just floating around, or disintegrating and rematerializing somewhere. And the boss fights are really, really brutal and not terribly fun. I think that some of the ways that it's unpredictable whether your guy is going to cast a spell or not. Let's say they get knocked down and you tell the sprite to heal or something like that, then he gets up and it's not really clear whether they will or not. The amount of times that you cast an item on someone just before they die and they still die, the things like that are pretty frustrating. One of my least favorite things with the entire game is when you're going to the Empire and you go to one Empire town, and then you go to the main Empire town, and then you go to the Gold City, all of those within about 10 minutes of each other, and all three of them have new gear, and you only need to do the third one. So unless you have played the game, like, you just get baited so hard into spending your money. I hate that. And it has some ways, I'm going to say at the end, that I do think it's actually a tighter game than Secret of Mana 2. Trials of Mana is, quality of life and gameplay wise, so vastly superior to Secret of Mana. Secret of Mana is like one of my nostalgic games, but playing it this time, just like the actual mechanics of combat are so much better in the sequel, it's unbelievable. Both games, you can say, are sort of equal musically. Technically speaking, Secret of Mana 1 has the more issues where, like, sound effects from fighting will drown out some of the music tracks. That's not really the same issue in the second one. The second one, I think, like, the technology had advanced a little bit more, or their mastery of it did more. The second game, in terms of not having the 0 to 100% charge, the combo meter, so once you hit 4 times, you can then use your special, and then when you get promoted, you hit 8 times, you can use your larger special, and then eventually you get your second promotion. It's so much fun to have battle in that game. I would honestly recommend just doing the 3 brawler dudes. Just take the 3 beefy boys. You can make Duran into sort of a holy paladin. You can make Hawk into like a ninja with offensive spells, although I don't really honestly see the point of using those spells when he can just attack with high attack power. And then you just have Kevin, aka Bam Bam, just like a super bruiser, especially when he transforms. It's so much fun to play that way. You don't have as many pauses from using all the magic spells and all those things that are pretty pointless when you could just bash on everybody. Just do it that way. It's so much more fun. I don't know, some of the boss fights in that game and some of the graphics in Trials of Mana, I think, are like the best pixel art on the platform. There's a certain point, both games are a little bit guilty to some degree of just sort of leading you through all the story with, like, oh, here's your 8 god beasts to fight after you get the 8 seeds, and go back here and do all these things. But there's the second half of the game structure, basically, is that there's 8 god beasts that come out of the seeds. So the first half of the game is going to the 8 temples, and the second half of the game is fighting the 8 bosses. And there is one that's flying in the air, and you're on your dragon fighting it. And there's 2 different phases, one where you're on the top of your dragon and one that you see from the side. And it's this phase where you're seeing the side of your dragon flamey fighting the boss is the most beautiful sprite work, I think, maybe on the SNES. Like the most beautiful pixel art on the SNES. It's unbelievably clear and bright. It's crazy. I love it. It's beautiful. So the second, I would sort of give them basically equal marks for music, gameplay. Despite rose-colored glasses of loving Secret of Mana, the gameplay is so vastly superior in the second one. I will say though, as you get to the later parts of it, the fact that there's 6 characters and you choose 3 of them, there's 3 different paths. The plot of the first game, with the main character being tied to the mana tree, it's a lot tighter and therefore a lot more like emotionally resonant. In the second game, you don't really care about any of the bad guys. The sort of ending with the fairy and the mana tree and all that stuff, it just doesn't have the same sort of like sense of feeling to it. It has the classic error of telling you things instead of showing you things. And so they just kind of wrap it up fairly quickly. So I think because they give you all these options to help with replayability, which is very, very good, because Secret of Mana's replayability comes from it being a tight, quick package. The replayability in the second game comes from the pretty impressive amount of variance in terms of playstyle and like different builds. I mean, the playstyles are roughly the same, but you can have totally different spells and a lot of different options if you play a bunch of different times. But it does sacrifice cohesion of story, and it's just a little bit looser. So generally speaking, I was really impressed by the fact that they're both roughly the same amount of time. They're both really, really fun games to blaze through. And just let me say again that the aesthetics of them are unmatched. I can still hear the music in my head for both of them. And that's a really cool thing this much time later. Okay, bye.